I'm on now.
We have all that
Now,
delicious data from flight recorder boxes. The National
Mhm.
Transportation Safety Board, for those who don't know, this is a government agency that investigates problems with aircraft whenever there's a malfunction or even a terrible accident causing loss of life. They have records from flight recorder data going back to the 1960s, publicly available on their website. And we've picked through that database to try to find evidence of airplanes negotiating Earth curvature. We can't find any.
Why would they do that though?
Why would they negotiate Earth curvature? Yeah, good question. Because people
Why would they
think
go
that
up in
Earth is a
altitude?
globe and it's not.
Why would they go up in altitude though, or something?
Yeah, exactly. Why would an airplane go up in altitude?
Yeah, on a globe. Why would it do that?
Yeah, why would it do it on a globe? Okay.
If the Earth is not like round, if it's not a globe, can you explain to me like how you believe kind of, you know, Francis Drake, his circumnavigation of the globe? Can you like explain to me how that was possible?
Yeah, he used the coordinate reference system, right? So he used celestial navigation. In fact, most maps today, if not all of them, are derived from the stars. The familiar latitude and longitude system that people think are wireframe meshes being stretched around a globe, that's actually derived from the stars. It's not on the globe, because if you're out at sea, you can find your latitude and longitude. The way you do it is with a sextant, with a clock, and with a good idea of where stars should be and what time of year and time of night it is.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see anybody try and develop a latitude system without looking at the sky. I love when Indio says that. Like, how do you know
Absolutely right. You can't do it.
Yeah.
People noticed that the further they moved away from Polaris in one direction, the Polaris started to get lower in the sky. I'm like, pretty much everybody I know can see this in the sky from everywhere on the known Earth. How about we use angle measurements to Polaris? And that'll tell us basically how far we are. If I know the Polaris is 45 degrees north of the horizon, up from the horizon in the sky, and I'm looking at it, and if somebody else says that they're seeing Polaris at 45 degrees up from the horizon too, then guess what? We are at the same latitude. Amazing. And that would be 45 degrees north latitude. See how that works? So people constructed a sphere out of the sky. It's a choice, a perception, a way to try to order the celestials. And then from that choice, they construed this coordinate reference system that was spherical, latitude and longitude. Latitude comes from declination, and longitude comes from right ascension. So sailors are like, well, I'm using the spherical coordinate system, but Earth is flat. Crap, what do I do? And they realized hundreds and hundreds of years ago that there was what's called in mathematics a topology mismatch. If you try to project a spherical surface onto a 2D surface, you're going to have a bad time. You're going to get distortions. So they said, okay, we're going to just start treating Earth as a sphere too. And so you know what they did back in like the 1500s? They took the known surveyed extent of the Earth, the land masses, and they wallpapered it into the celestial sphere. And they called it a globe. And instead of using it as a way of trying to get an idea of where things are in relation to how we perceive the stars, people started believing that we actually live on the outside surface of that. It became so popular, people today believe that concept, and it's a useful concept, right? It kind of works. People believe today that they live on a globe as a consequence of that. So what I want to know is if people believe that Earth is a globe based on the stars, then how come we can measure the Earth flat?
Yeah, exactly. So do you understand that now? That was a great question that was asked and a great answer.
Hi, Sporadic.
Hello.
Hi, my boyfriend's with me right now. He had a question for you, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you think the government spread propaganda about the Earth being curved when it's not?
No, I don't. You know, you'll find a lot of flat earthers, a vast majority on social media, who I disagree with, believe that's the case, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think they buy into it too. And you know what? I think there are good reasons for people to accept it. Good reasons being that it seems to work. I don't know anything different. And you know, I've been basically subjected to this my entire life. Why should I upend my life? Why should I think anything different? I have no reason to, because it doesn't affect my life. And you know what? You might be right to say that. I think people working in government are taking data that they collect from scientific instrumentation and shoehorning it into a model. I mean, you could read about the process on like NASA's website. I was looking at some flow diagrams on NASA's website where they take all this data that they gather from telescopes, from satellites, overhead platforms in general. They feed it into a processing center, and then they start applying globe coordinates to it. They take raw data that they obtain from using Euclidean geometry, that is to say, elevation angles, azimuth angles, which require flat horizontal and flat vertical reference planes. They take that, they start bending them to what they believe the Earth is based off of a 2,500-year-old concept of the stars, the celestial sphere.
I see. Thank you very much.
Right. I mean, that's really what's going on all the time. They take flat Earth angle measurements and they bend it to a ball because they believe Earth is a ball. So they believe that's what it should be.
So there's like some manipulation going on to kind of fit their hypothesis. Like research bias.
Backfitting. Absolutely. And it's not, I don't think it's nefarious. I think people believe it so much that this is just the right thing to do. Totally. Right. So if you start to think about it, it's almost a scarier situation to think that it's not that there's like a dark conspiracy to hide the true nature of Earth. It's even worse if the entire world is delusional. And I truly believe that to be the case.
Yeah, I'm glad you just said that because it really bakes my potato or, pops my bicycle tire when people come in here and they say, well, I'm not that smart or, don't do that to yourself. The one thing you can't go get in trouble for is stealing knowledge. So you can always learn what you don't know. Don't put yourself down. A lot of people that come in here trying to defend the globe or prove it or disprove the flat earth knowledge and or topic say that about themselves. And it really bothers me when they do that.
Yeah. So, are there people at NASA and other places that know the Earth is flat? Yeah, I think so. I think it's true. And you know what? Could you imagine like working at NASA and let's say you're in Sporadic's world where everybody believes in the globe and you're like the one guy in your office who freaking figured it out. You're like, oh shit. All these people are like NASA globe heads and they love Star Trek. I see what's going on here. I see where everybody's backfitting data to fit an ideal. I see where everybody's confusing the map for the territory. The classic problem for the ages. I see how it's done. And nobody else seems to realize that's happening. Who else has figured it out? I don't know, maybe Bob over there in accounting. I don't know. So there are people like that at NASA. And there are probably also people super high up in compartmented parts of the government that know and just don't talk about it or make a big deal out of it. I mean, The globe is a
That's
great
cool.
idea to have a public. Have you ever heard of something called the noble lie? The noble lie in history and philosophy is the idea that an emperor can unite people. They can dissolve differences amongst different people because, right, emperors are in charge of amalgamating people of different cultures that they conquer. How do you dissolve their differences and unite them? You create a common cause, like an American dream, or like maybe a heliocentric globe cosmology for the world to believe in.
Or
That's
like
not a
Anthony
cause
Fauci.
of the globe.
Sorry to cut you off there. Don't forget Anthony Fauci with his noble lie. He
Yeah.
stated that, didn't he?
Well, in this case, I think there could be people at the top, very few, very, very,
This is
very
so
few,
dumb.
who know this. Okay. But I don't know for sure. You know what's dumb? It's the fact that nobody can ever experience the globe. There's no proof that anyone ever has, and everybody believes it to be true. That's freaking crazy to me. But what's wrong with letting a little noble lie self-perpetuate? I don't have to do anything. I can just let it go, right? Just let it go. What harm is this? It's not going to cause any problem in anybody's lives. In fact, everybody's getting behind all these ideas. People from India, people from Japan, people from Australia, people from South America all believe that they live on the spinning space ball. You know, that's a good thing. It's uniting humanity together behind a common concept. What's wrong with that? Yeah, I think there's a lot of that going on at the upper echelons. So is it nefarious? I don't really think so. I really don't. And I think the number of people who know the truth of flat Earth who are in positions of power are probably very, very few. You know, and there are some people from NASA who became flat earthers and are quite public about it. I mean, David Beverly Jr. used to set up NASA satellite terminals, uplinks and downlinks, little tiny portable ones in Antarctica. Yeah, he was like former Marine Corps and then worked at the special unit at NASA that did this. I mean, you know, it wasn't nefarious at all. He believed in the globe back then.
There's Jay Tolan as well. There's Jesus
Yeah, Jay
Freak, Computer
Tolan.
Geek.
Jay Tolan says, oh my gosh, he's an RF engineer, an expert in optics as well. He's got great videos. Yeah, he's a high-end military contractor. And I mean, he's got some excellent bona fides. He's worked on missile guidance systems, among other things. Long-range missile guidance systems, he says, right? He thinks the Earth is flat. He's got a whole channel devoted to flat Earth.
And you've got Jesus Freak, Computer Geek.
Yeah, that's who I was talking about, David Beverly.
Oh, right. Right, okay, that's his name. Okay. You got Math Powerland.
Yeah, an artist for NASA, right? I mean, so are you in the company of weirdos? Sure, but not all of us.
I'm not going to disclose who, but there is actually someone in our server too, from the home server.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yep, there's a guy who has intimate knowledge of things. Yeah, he hasn't been around that much, but yeah, God bless him.
Yeah, true. I haven't seen him around for a while. Yeah.
JP. You know, and there are people in this very chat who've been around the block too. People who know about coordinate reference systems and why they work the way they do. You know, and none of that really matters at the end of the day because you can't hide a flat Earth.
That's true, not when it's right out there, right outside, right in front of you.
mean, it totally is a model. The globe, it's not a scientific model, but the globe is a model in a colloquial sense. And people think it's real. It is a self-contained coordinate reference system, and it does make some physical claims about the universe. You know, they're not, there's nothing rigorous about it. But when you understand a little bit about geometry, you understand that coordinate reference systems, as reference systems, are arbitrary. There are multiple globes out there. People don't realize this. And surveyors who believe in the globe are not thinking about this. When they sit down and they start surveying distances and plugging in coordinates, you know, they can go into settings and they can choose a different globe. They can choose the globe as people conceived of it in 1927, called the North American Data 27. They can choose WGS 84, the World Geodetic System of 1984. They can choose a Clark or Bessel ellipsoid from the 1800s if they wanted. They can also select a flat planar coordinate reference system from any of the states that they work in, because if they're in the United States, their respective state may actually require that they use a planar geometry and not a spherical one. And it's funny, there's academic papers revealing the heightened accuracy of using planar surveying methods, planar coordinates, to get your position fixes and distance calculations as opposed to a spherical one. You know, you get better accuracy.
Right. Yeah, there's like, and all these projections that they claim to use. So they'll like, oh, this projection doesn't work for this purpose. Oh, let's try this one. Oh, this works better. And it's like, why should they? If they're all the same, if the projections are the same thing, why wouldn't they just work? Like, why not just why use the projection? Just use the thing you projected it from.
Yeah. I mean, there's an ignorance and a hubris at the same time, right? With technology. People who think the globe is real think that we have it all figured out, right? And so they'll think, okay, yeah, I mean, why can't surveyors use a common universal standard that's been proven to be true? That these coordinates are absolutely true. Well, I mean, different countries have different datums. Like, did you know that in China, this is interesting. I've documented this and I can bring the receipts. It's illegal for you in China to conduct surveying as a private citizen. It's illegal for you to basically measure your back fucking yard. And if you make off with your measurements of the earth and coordinates and leave the country without declaring it, you will go to jail. If they can find you and bring you to justice, you will go to jail. If you keep a logbook of your coordinates and measurements, you will go to jail. If you don't use the Chinese government coordinate system, you will go to jail. That's China, folks. Globe or die. So then people say, well, if Earth is flat, how come everybody's, doing the globe thing? Well, in some countries like China, if you don't do the globe thing, you go to jail. Meanwhile, over in Australia, isn't this true, T-Dub? There was some kind of regulation for surveying railroads that required using a flat horizontal plane for all of Australia.
It was for the Commonwealth in general, I think. So, like, it was passed in British Parliament, and yeah, it was a law that they had to abide by, and so that the horizontal reference datum had to remain constant throughout the entire project. Yep.
Yeah, no pear-shaped Earth, as Neil deGrasse Tyson would say. Can't use that. Isn't that interesting, right? So in the Anglo-American Commonwealth, you have to use planar surveys, but man, if you go to China, you got to use curving surveys.
Right. Now that means that if they've changed it since, that means that all the railways in Britain and all the Commonwealth countries that were built by that standard back in the day, they all slope uphill at one end.
Oh, funny. Yeah.
If we're on a globe.
You're right. You're right. They'd be climbing in one direction. That's funny. No, so our coordinate reference system is arbitrary. If I'm here talking about planar geometry and plane surveying being more accurate, well, here is the tiebreaker. The tiebreaker is if you believe Earth is a globe, but you are taking flat Earth angle measurements, and by that I mean Euclidean geometry. With your surveys, you're using angles, straight lines, not curved angles, straight line angles, right? Those have an easy way to map one-to-one in Cartesian space, where you don't have a curving reference, a curving coordinate system. When you begin to curve it, you produce inaccuracies. And the literature in the field of surveying supports that planar surveying is more accurate than spherical ones. Now, this doesn't mean that they're all flat earthers. How they deal with this is they say, yeah, we know Earth is a globe, but it's so big and complicated, we haven't figured everything out yet. So they've got all kinds of corrections that people who don't look into this have no idea about. So corrections include local changes of the deflection of the vertical, curving plumb lines. Yeah, that's right. They believe that if you were to go like hang a plumb line from outer space down to Earth, that it curves somewhere in the middle. And they believe that it deflects, which means that the pendulum at the bottom doesn't point straight down to where you think the common center of Earth is. It's actually going to be moved off in that direction a little bit. So it could introduce complex curves, not simple curves. You know, curves with, multiple asymptotes, right? So it's really funny. I mean, and nobody's actually seen this or measured it in real life. So if you start introducing curving plumb lines, you've got a curving radius, and you've got a curving radius, you can take a flat Earth and curve it.
Sporadic, how do you summarize the difference between Euclidean and non-Euclidean geometry? And there is a point where they meet at the middle to give you some sort of realist level perspective.
Yeah.
From the
so picture this. All right, let's use an example that Globers love to talk about: the ant on the basketball. This gets into manifold topology. All right, so we're dealing with the shape of surfaces. If you are an ant on a basketball, you might find that the surface is relatively flat in every direction you go. And what would give away the fact that the surface of this manifold is not a Euclidean? And by Euclidean, picture like a piece of paper, XY axis flat. What would give the ant the impression? Well, you know what? The ant might go in one direction and end up right back where he started. Let's say he could actually measure going straight. Straight as a freaking arrow. And he drops breadcrumbs along the way. And guess what? He ends up to his first breadcrumb, his second breadcrumb, third breadcrumb, fourth breadcrumb from going in a straight line. How the hell did that happen? He'll go in a different direction. He'll do the same. The ant will conclude, because he's smart as shit, that this is a flat manifold that has spherical geometry, what's called a two-sphere in geometry. The surface of a sphere is two-dimensional, and what makes it interesting, unlike a piece of paper, is it's got what's called a looping surface with periodicity. The loop, you already understand from the ants, the periodicity is defined by how far the ant has to go before it comes back to where he started again. Now, the ant could be clever and say, okay, well, this appears to be a spherical surface, but how do I know if it's a ball or not? Because the difference between a spherical surface and a ball is the third dimension, the existence of volume, space to fill inside the ball. Without that, it's just a two-dimensional surface. And the closest analogy I can describe for that is, imagine if you take a beach ball, deflate it so it's flat, squeeze all the air out of it, and then basically walk on it like a conveyor belt. Okay? You're going to be scrolling the surface of a flattened beach ball under your feet as you walk, like a conveyor belt or a treadmill. And every direction you go on this ball, you'll end up where you started again if you go in a straight line, but it's flat. So that's the idea of a two-sphere. So the ant will say, okay, maybe I'm on a two-sphere. How do I know if it's a three-dimensional sphere with volume? The ant's going to be like, crap, I'm going to have to go to outer space. Let me launch a rocket and let me see this shit. So funny thing is if the ant could go up into outer space in this magical world, you know what he might see? He might see one of two things. He might either see a ball that he had been walking on, the basketball, or he's going to see a repeating surface. He's going to see multiple instances of this, often on the horizon. Yeah, so which is it? So Euclidean space is going to be straight line XY axis on XYZ axis. You've got like a flat piece of paper is Euclidean. You can draw straight line geometry and you know these lines are straight. You know they're true. You know they're not secretly curving on a big surface that's secretly curving that you can't detect, right? Non-Euclidean space will curve somehow. And whether that's a sphere or whether that's like a saddle shape, like a Pringles potato chip, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter. Those are non-Euclidean spaces where there's an XY grid that you impose on it, but the reference grid itself is not straight and true. It's not orthogonal. It's going to have curves. So this kind of parlays into Einstein math and something called Minkowski space. So Einstein stole from Minkowski the idea that you could be in space and everything could appear to be Euclidean XYZ axis, just like an ant on a basketball. And in your normal everyday lives, you have no idea if you're actually in a curved space-time or not because you're in it, because the effects are too small, too unnoticed, and you will conclude that everything is flat. But in reality, everything is curved, right? The only way to prove that is to do actual measurements, to use Euclidean space itself in a non-Euclidean world and see if there's curvature. That's why we say, let's use laser tests. Let's use long distance observations because we know light propagates fairly straight, especially straight in infrared. You know, let's build things true and level to what we know the surface to be throughout all points of our construction. And let's detect curvature, and nobody can find a single thing. Curvature only appears in the math. It appears in the math of airplanes' inertial navigation systems when they use Euclidean geometry of azimuthal headings, flat Earth angle measurements, like on a piece of paper. And the computer systems curve that geometry into a globe Earth that's presented to the pilot on a digital screen. That's actually, yes, that does actually happen. I've looked into these systems. The Boeing 777 Dreamliner does this. It will take flat Earth angle measurements, feed them into the Air Data Inertial Reference Unit, which applies something called a transport rate, which is a fake rotation of the aircraft, as well as Schuller tuning and a fake Coriolis correction. And it will plot the airplane onto a globe for the user to see on a digital display. Now, which is real, the digital display or what the pilot's actually freaking doing? Okay? The pilot will look at the globe and will say, well, Earth is so big, I don't notice it, even though I'm doing this flat Earth thing. But the pilot is unaware of how the ADIRU, how the inertial navigation system is actually accepting these real world measurements and curving them. Okay? So we know in real life that we're using flat Earth angle measurements. And we know in real life that there are systems that are taking those measurements and adding mathematics to them to curve them into curving space, to non-Euclidean space, non-Cartesian space, and presenting that as a virtual reality, a matrix for people's minds to believe in. That is happening everywhere. It even happens at NASA. It happens at SpaceX. Happens to astronauts. It's happening everywhere. And people believe in the globe so much that they are doing this thinking that they're supporting the truth. Like, you got NASA engineers launching high altitude freaking balloons, taking measurements, and then cramming that shit into a globe, even though they measured everything on a flat Earth. It's fucking unreal. Yes, this is actually happening. Yes, we can show that this is happening. We can show the thought process. That's how we know it's happening. We can show you their process that they're following to do this, that they seem to be ignorant of. We are taking their face and we're rubbing their face in the dog shit, and we're telling them, look what you did, and they don't fucking believe it. It's freaking asinine. All right. I got to install a new thermostat, so I'm going to step back for a minute. Thanks for letting me rant.
Thanks for that, Sporadic, bro. Thank you.
Yeah, some info, bro. Appreciate that. Rant anytime you like, please.
Yeah, please rant some more.
Yeah, it's therapeutic, mate. So well done. Excellent stuff.
Set me up with the show to YouTube and I'll rant.
Yeah, I do like the bit where the information coming into the plane is then being bent, and then it comes up on your display as curvature when it's all happening on a horizontal, linear, straight line. Yeah, I knew that anyway.
Yeah, it's true. We got all the information on that. It's public. It's public, and people aren't trying to hide it, right? It's out in the public because everybody putting out in the public thinks Earth is a freaking globe. It's that shit crazy.